Hi there, my name's Chris Myers. I'm one of the guys that runs the Sports Medicine Ultrasound Group here in the UK. During the lockdown, I've reviewed quite a few machines, the Alpinion, iCube 7, the Philips Lumify, which I've spent some time with over the last week, and I'll be publishing my thoughts on that. And I've also had a bit of a closer look at the Butterfly machine, and today we're going to focus a little bit more on the Butterfly iQ. I've had 2 days with a Butterfly machine, so I've spent quite a bit of time looking at its how easy it is to use, having a feel of it, because I must say it does feel pretty good when you scan with it, and obviously looking at image quality, which is by far the most important thing when it comes to musculoskeletal ultrasound. I've seen quite a few reviews on YouTube about the Butterfly, but haven't seen many specific to musculoskeletal. I'm a physiotherapist that uses musculoskeletal ultrasound every day in my practice, have done for about the last 12 years, and I carry out lots of guided injections as well. Obviously, the handheld space at the moment is a very competitive one, with lots of new machines coming out. And I think it's really important as somebody that, like myself, that's quite experienced with lots of different machines, that we ensure we get the right information out there for people looking to buy, particularly those that are looking to start musculoskeletal ultrasound. Because whatever machine you buy, it's going to cost you many thousands of pounds. And it's really important that you get the right machine, not just for now to learn, but also for the next few years. So you don't grow out of it, and that certainly could be the case in some of these handheld machines, with some of these handheld machines. So what have we done so far? So it started off, I tried the Sonon machine. I couldn't get used to the probe on that one. I haven't spent too much time with it. I then have done the review on the Clarius version 2, which I must say I was extremely impressed with. I've also used the mini Alpinion, the mini Sono, which I'll be doing a review on soon. And then over the last week, I've been spending a lot of time with the Philips Lumify. But today, as I said, we're going to be talking about the Butterfly. There's been an awful lot of hype around the Butterfly because it is a pretty cool device. But is it good enough? Should musculoskeletal practitioners be buying it? Let's find out. So you only have to Google the Butterfly to sort of appreciate the hype around it. I think Bill Gates or the Gates Foundation has been a big investor in it. They've just raised £250 million. Every time I scroll through Facebook at the moment, I get a sponsored link from Butterfly, and it's been very heavily invested in. Which is really exciting because as somebody that uses ultrasound every day, I see the value of ultrasound. And obviously what this has done is it's another handheld device, which is cheaper than your sort of traditional machines. And actually that's meant that certainly more developing countries can start integrating ultrasound into their medical system and their medical care. Now, I'm not going to talk about anything other than musculoskeletal because I don't know anything other than musculoskeletal. So this review very much is relevant to the musculoskeletal practitioner more than somebody that's going to be using it for scanning hearts, lungs, etc. And I'm sure there's lots of other people that have got a lot more experience in those areas that can give you more information about it. But there's no doubt that this Butterfly iQ has a lot of hype, and certainly is going after the beginner, I suppose. The person that wants to get started in ultrasound probably doesn't want to spend £10,000 at the moment, and they see probably via a Facebook ad where they are spending hundreds of thousands of pounds at the moment, and they probably see an ad and think, well, for around £2,000, surely this is the answer to getting an ultrasound machine to get started with. So let's find out a bit more about it. So traditionally, ultrasound probes use crystals. That's why you can't drop them, because if you drop them, they break and they're very expensive to replace. Now, there's lots of different types of probes used. Now, in musculoskeletal, we generally only use a linear probe. Some people may also use a curvilinear probe. I sometimes use them for looking at hips or deep shoulders, and also sometimes for guided injections. But overall, 90% of the time, I only use my linear probe, and you certainly don't need anything other than one probe in musculoskeletal. Now, if I was working on a ward, or if I was working in A&E, where you might do a mixture of different types of scans, that you might scan a heart, you might scan an Achilles tendon to see if it's ruptured, then you do need more than one probe. Now, traditionally, certainly with the Philips Lumify, with the Clarius version 2 and version 1, which are both handheld machines, you would have to have different probes for those different roles if you're working in A&E. What's really cool about the Butterfly is that they've gone away from the conventional crystals, and they've actually developed, from what I understand, is these silicon microchips to produce the image, which is new, and really is quite impressive technology. So they've got these 9,000 microsensors. Now, what that does, and what you can do, is in one probe, you can have a curved probe, a linear probe, and a phased probe, as per those images at the bottom there. So just with a switch of a button, essentially you've got 3 probes in one. Now, for somebody that does musculoskeletal, I don't think that's really required and that beneficial. But if you're somebody like an A&E consultant, or somebody working in rehabilitation, where you may do a heart scan and then you may do a tendon scan, or you may do a block if you're an anaesthetist, then you can actually change between those probes just with a push of the button. Whereas traditionally you would have to physically change the probe. And certainly if you need more than one probe, it's particularly when it comes to handheld machines, you're probably doubling your cost. So this is certainly a big advantage, not for me as a musculoskeletal practitioner, but certainly somebody that needs to use and do different types of scans requiring different probes. So pretty cool. Now, I didn't look at a new one, but apparently, and I have seen the boxes, this is like when you get an iPhone and you unwrap it and it's in a beautiful box, it's beautifully presented. You get that suction as the box comes off, and it's very, very exciting. And you don't only have to look at the carry case that you can buy, but believe me, it is quite an expensive carry case, that you see what a really cool design this is. When you feel the probe, it's made out of aluminium. It's very smooth. It looks cool. It's in black, very, very nice to look at. And in your hand, it's very smooth, and it sort of goes in at the right places, and it's nice around the hand to use. And it doesn't take too long to get used to using the probe. But you do need to remember that this probe is bigger and it is heavier than your conventional ultrasound probe. So it does take a little bit of getting used to. Now, the reason, or one of the reasons it's bigger, one is because obviously it's 3 probes in one, but also the second reason is that, and one of the reasons it's heavier, is actually the battery is within the probe. So although it's wired, it's not wireless like the Clarius, it is a wired handheld machine. The battery is actually inside it. And from my understanding, the reason that you have to have the battery inside is that because this is Apple compatible, and it is literally, from my understanding, the only handheld device that is Apple compatible at the moment, you can't take the battery out of a Apple tablet or an Apple phone. Whereas the Philips Lumify, as some of you will know, it is plugged in and it's a very light probe. You don't need to have the battery in the probe, because with Samsung devices, I believe, and with Android devices, you can actually take the power from the battery, or the tablet itself, the battery within the tablet or the phone. So although the Butterfly is wired, it is a bit of a heavier probe because the battery is inside it as well. Now, I did carry out a few guided injections just on meat specimens. As you can see from this picture here, the probe, or the footprint of the probe itself, is actually a lot wider than just a conventional probe, and compared to, say, for example, the Lumify and the Clarius. Now, I thought this might feel a bit weird carrying out a guided injection, because you've got to make sure you get right in the middle, but actually it didn't take that long. I was only doing simple things and only superficial injections with quite large needles on meat specimens, but it was quite straightforward, and certainly the probe was not too heavy where I felt that, you know, it would make my hand hurt or anything like that. The battery can be an issue with some of these other handheld machines, particularly the wireless ones, such as the Clarius version 2, or the Clarius version 1, because you've got to have all the battery inside the case of the probe. And therefore, as a result of that, the Clarius, for example, has about 45 minutes when it's fully charged. The Butterfly, which clearly has, got the battery inside it, it has actually got about 2 hours of battery life. So that's an advantage of the Butterfly over the Clarius, for example. It has a charging mat, so you don't even plug it in, which is pretty cool. You just put the Butterfly on top of the mat. It takes about 5 hours to charge at 100%, and that will give you about 2 hours of battery life, which is not too bad at all. It is compatible with Apple, so as I said, it's the only one that is iOS compatible, but also it is compatible with Google and Samsung tablets. So overall, pretty cool device. Probe takes a little bit of getting used to, and it is a little bit heavier than your conventional probes. The Butterfly Cloud. Now, the Clarius has got a really nice cloud system, and the Butterfly has got a similarly nice cloud system. So it's very easy to store. It's very easy to export. You can see in this case, and this is off the Butterfly website, so don't worry about the names on there. But basically, you can have a team where you can share your different scans, which is really nice for learning, for sharing scans with supervisors. And as I said, it's really easy to label your scans, put your reports on there, and very easy to export. And this is something I really like about the Butterfly. I also liked it about the Clarius, and it's something that the Philips Lumify is missing, in my opinion. But we'll be talking more about the comparisons later. Later on. So really nice that you can just get your scans nice and quickly. So when I was teaching on one of our courses recently, one of the guys had a Butterfly. We also had the Clarius version 1, Clarius version 2. We had a GE Logic. We had a Sonosite machine, and we could compare them all. But what I thought we'd just talk briefly about is, how does the Butterfly compare to the Clarius version 2 and the Philips Lumify? For me, as an experienced practitioner, although the price is very attractive, the image quality of an ultrasound machine has to and is the most important element of the machine. Particularly, this is important when you're a beginner, because when you're starting off, you're not very good. Your probe skills are quite limited, and you're not going to be able to optimize that image as well as a more experienced practitioner. So having a poor image quality is going to make this doubly hard for you. So let's have a look. So let's have a look at the Butterfly versus the Clarius. So this is the Clarius version 2. So let's just make this clear. On the left-hand side, okay, this is the Clarius, and here you can see the Clarius image. Here we've got the Butterfly image, and here we've got the Butterfly image. So this is a longitudinal section of the median nerve, so quite a small structure. And I think, and I do think this is quite well accepted, is that the Butterfly image is quite fuzzy. It doesn't have many shades of grey, and actually you can see that the Clarius does have better spatial resolution, more shades of grey, and overall I think it is a much better image quality compared to the Butterfly. So if you're somebody that wants to look at very small structures, so a nerve, for example, or even structures like or even pathology like a partial thickness tear of the rotator cuff or the common extensor tendon, then I personally think the butterfly is going to make this very hard for you. And I would struggle to have the confidence in my diagnosis if I was using the butterfly. Now, if I was looking at the Achilles tendon, for example, or the patella tendon, so quite simple, superficial structures, then I think the butterfly would be adequate. And I use the word adequate. It would be satisfactory. But as an experienced sonographer, the butterfly image quality for musculoskeletal isn't there at the moment. I wouldn't want to scan with it personally, and although it is reasonably cheap, I think that it will become quite frustrating to scan with, particularly for those medium to small sized areas, and also the deeper areas. So the butterfly categorically would not be good enough for hips. That includes the lateral hip, around the glute med tendons and trochanteric bursa, and the proximal hamstring. I think anything deeper than sort of 3 centimeters, I do feel it's going to struggle with on that linear setting. So overall, I think the image quality of the butterfly has got a lot to be, a lot of areas to improve in. The good news is this is the first version of the butterfly. I believe it is selling very well. Hopefully not to too many musculoskeletal practitioners, or certainly not those that don't have another machine as well. But I'm sure they're going to come out with a second version with all that money they've got invested in the company to get a better image quality. And I would tell the guys at Butterfly, we need to improve this image quality for musculoskeletal scanning. And although I've only presented this area here, in the full review, you'll see some more images. And overall, they're all sort of telling me the same thing. So what about the price? So it's pretty glossy, this machine. It looks really good. Let's talk about the price. So $2,000. So that's pretty darn cheap for an ultrasound machine, and certainly one that looks that cool. In terms of image quality, I think it is probably worth about $2,000. If you have a $10,000 machine, or pounds in the UK, it's going to be a much better image quality. It's going to be much better to learn with. It's going to be much better to scan with. You're going to get a better image quality. But $2,000 overall is obviously a pretty good price. But it's not just $2,000, and this is what you need to be careful with. You have an annual membership, and you can see here that annual membership is $420, which is around 330, something like that, pounds. So you can see if you add 1 year membership, you add your case as well, which you will need, then it's going to come to around $2,500, £2,000, something like that. If you go for a 3-year membership, which you will need, so every year you have to pay another £350, something like that. So if you say you're going to use this machine for 3 years, which you'd like to think you're going to be satisfied with it for 3 years, I'm not sure you will in musculoskeletal. I think you'll be looking for another machine reasonably quickly. Then you've got to add another 1,000 basically. So you're looking at $3,000. So what's that? £2,300, something like that. So it does add up. It's still one of the cheaper machines on the market. It has good usability for that price, but the image quality for musculoskeletal does reflect that price as well. One really nice feature of the Butterfly, which the Clarius has got, Clarius Live, and I believe it's called Clarius Live, and then you've also got the Philips Lumify React, which I believe it's called React, and this is this sort of tele-guidance or tele-teaching. And that means that you can call up your friend. In this case, they also have to have a Butterfly, so it can't just be anybody. And you can share the images with them. So obviously it's encouraging people, and particularly teams who have Butterfly machines, to communicate with each other. You can share your scans with, say, for example, a supervisor if you're learning how to do it. And they can give you feedback and real-time feedback on the position of the probe, and it's pretty cool. And you can just see it on the bottom right picture here. is you can get feedback from your supervisor and they tell you where to rotate the probe. So that's pretty cool. And that, as somebody that does lots of teaching, that's something that would be quite useful. But as a teacher, I would find the image quality quite frustrating. And I think as somebody that's trying to learn ultrasound, this is making it a little bit harder than maybe it needs to be. And certainly learning ultrasound is already a pretty difficult skill, particularly in musculoskeletal, because everything that we're looking at is pretty small. I think it could be quite frustrating. And certainly, I think my opinion of the butterfly is if you're scanning just big structures, you know, like the Achilles, like the patellar tendon, then I think this would be okay. But if you're after the sort of finer detail of anatomy, deeper structures, smaller structures, which to be honest is probably 80% of musculoskeletal conditions, then I don't think the image quality is good enough. But this is a really nice feature that they've recently added in. So just in conclusion, I think this is really exciting technology. It's clearly a company that believes looks are important, which I think most of us think looks are important, and the feel of the probe is really nice. And as I said, the connectivity, the usability, the teleguidance, all of those things are really, really nice. The ability to easily export scans and email scans looking on the cloud is excellent. And so those things are really, really good advantages of this machine. It is relatively cheap, as we've talked about, compared to other machines. But is it good enough from an image quality point of view for musculoskeletal? I conclude that I don't think it is good enough. I'm sure there'll be a second generation that will look more specifically at musculoskeletal, and I think they'll come out with a much better machine, a much better image quality. And at that point, hopefully I can recommend this for musculoskeletal. At the moment, I know of 2 or 3 people that have bought it, either before they've been on my course or they've just contacted me via email. And certainly a significant percentage of them have regretted buying it, particularly if that is the only machine they're going to have in their practice. If you've got a butterfly, one of the physios that bought it had a machine in the clinic, a nice GE portable machine, and they actually bought a butterfly because they worked with a football team and they wanted something more portable, and so they could use that on the road. But those patients that they saw would come into the clinic and they would scan on the bigger, or on the GE machine, which has good image quality. Also, the person that I'm talking about used the butterfly for just teaching themselves when they're at home, scanning their family, scanning their friends, and it's obviously a very compatible machine. And as a result of having that second machine and having it as a portable machine where they could scan at home, their progress was really quick. And actually they were doing our mentorship program, and they made really quick progress because they had good access to a machine. But certainly I wouldn't recommend the IQ for somebody that the IQ is going to be their only machine, because I don't think the image quality is good enough. But I'm sure, as I said, in the future, they're going to come up with a very nice second version that's good for musculoskeletal. If anybody completely disagrees with me or agrees with me, or if they've got any questions about, machines, handheld machines, then feel free to drop me an email. And there's certainly more resources on our website. We also have a Facebook closed forum, and if you just search SMUG Ultrasound Forum in Facebook and you request to join, be more than happy for you to join that. And it's a really nice forum for sharing scans, sharing ideas, and there's always lots of chat about ultrasound machines. So thanks very much for listening. I hope you found it useful. And my next review is going to be on the Philips Lumify, and then we're going to do a head-to-head of the Philips Lumify versus the Clarius version 2. And I think those 2 are the best handheld machines on the market at the moment. And so hopefully you'll find that interesting too. Thanks very much for listening.